integration and what capabilities it has. So I thought of taking the demo use case here. So let's take a functional requirement here. Vision Corporation, let's say the customer has procured HCM Cloud application, right? So Oracle HCM Cloud application, and there is a challenge to the developers or integration developers to build a travel request application to their employees. And let's assume the travel request application is not a custom functionality or a functionality which is not available in HCM Cloud, right? So now how this challenge is taken by the integration developers, and how, I mean, once the employee raises a travel request, right, it needs to go to the manager for an approval, and once it's approved, right, so probably you might want it to save it into a downstream system. In this particular demo, I'll try to use Visual Builder as a Visual Builder database as mechanisms to persist the travel record. Okay, so this is a function requirement, and now we convert this function requirement to a technical requirement, how we map with OIC components per se, for example, right? So when the employee has to build, enter a travel request, he needs a web interface. So you can build a web interface using Visual Builder component in OIC, and employee needs an approval process. It needs to go through an approval process, and the travel is raised, right? So which means that we need a workflow to capture your travel request and also raise an approval to the manager or whatever, right? So which means that process automation in OIC satisfies this requirement of building a workflow. And integration. So we want, once the travel request is approved, we wanted to go and persist the status of this particular travel request into, for example, something like Visual Builder DB or any downstream DB, for example, right? So it could be anything. In this case, in this sample, for the sake of demo, we are using Visual Builder database here. So integration is not just meant for small pieces of like this. It can do a whole lot of things like integrating with SaaS non-premise applications. But for the demo sake, we are trying to take a very simplest scenario possible. And now you understand what a functional requirement, and now how we can map to a technical requirement, and how OIC components can come into place. So if I put a high-level diagram, I just quickly jotted down. Just don't mind the blocks here. Little bit hazy here. But if you see here, right, so if we talk about this particular architecture, it's not a big architecture. What all we are looking at is, just give me a second, I'll share the screen in a moment. Okay, so, okay, sorry for that case. So, okay, so here we have travel request, and we wanted to satisfy this with Visual Builder component in OIC. And we wanted to use, so once this Visual Builder page is used, right? So we wanted to invoke a process. So this is a process automation component kicking off. And once the process is kicked off, a manager approves a particular travel request, right? So we wanted to go and persist or start the Visual Builder database again, right? So for example, this could be an integration component, right? So acting to persist the status into travel in Visual Builder database. So we have Visual Builder invoking a process, and the process is invoking an integration to persist the status of the travel request. So this is what we wanted to achieve. And so let's quickly try and see what's the best, how best we can try and build the solution. Okay. So once you provision OIC, right? So from OCI console, right? So you get to a dashboard, something like this, and this is called as an OIC homepage for people who have not seen, right? So this is very intuitive experience, you will notice, because all the capabilities we are talking about, like ability to build process workflows or integrations or B2B or Visual Builder or whatsoever, right? So all these are available in the form of tabs. You can tick each of them and get into respective functionality, right? So here, so what I'll do is I've opened tabs for each of these, right? So in the interest of time, so I've kept separate tabs for Visual Builder, integration, and process. So let's first step into the Visual Builder, and I wanted to create and travel request application basically for employees who wants to build an interface to, you want to give an interface to the employees, right? So you want to give a web interface to the employees. So I'll call it as employee ETR web app, employee travel request web app. And I'll try to use a theme called SaaS theme here. And let's finish this. So this gives us a SaaS theme, SaaS look and feel theme here. And so this is a Visual Builder interface, and I'm creating an application, web application here. And so this is a Visual Builder dashboard or a canvas where you can build your web applications. And here, I wanted to go and create a business object. So in the interest of time, what I'll do is I'll not create a business object, but rather I'll go and import a business object. Okay, so import business objects, and I'll try and drag and drop a business object so that I don't need to create the fields manually. And this, I have exported a business object, so I'm importing that and go next. And this basically lists down all the fields. So this is my structure of the business object, which is existing in Visual Builder. So I'm importing one business object into it. And this is where I wanted to go and process my travel request, and these are the list of fields there. Okay. And I go and create this business object because I wanted to persist all these travel requests raised by employees into something like a Visual Builder business object. Right? And behind the scenes, it stores into an embedded database or a database which is attached to the Visual Builder. Okay. So let's close this, and we have a business object. And once the business object is created, let's open this business object. Let's go to the endpoints. So once the business object is created, actually, just give me a second. Let's refresh this page once again. So once a business object is created, you have a CRUD set of operations that are available against every business object, so that you can interact with this business object. This is automatically created in Visual Builder. Okay, so we have this business endpoints ready, and so how if you have to interact with any of these CRUD operations, business object provides us an endpoint here. Right? So this is an endpoint. Let's go and copy this endpoint. It will be useful for us to create a connection in integration. So now let's step into integration. Okay. So from the dashboard, you can click on integrations. So which will take you to this particular page here. It's where it has. So this is an integration component or a canvas where you can create your integrations, create your connections, and go and build your orchestrations or what we call it as an integration flow here. So what we wanted to do here is as per our architecture diagram here, we have a Visual Builder, we have a process, and we have a integration. So this integration is responsible to go and update the status of travel request. So what we will do is we'll try to create a proxy integration with in the integration component which will persist the travel request into the database, Visual Builder database. So what I'll do is I'll go and create an integration. So there are different design patterns that you can leverage in integration, right? So if you're working with a real-time kind of an integration flows, you can use an app-driven orchestration pattern. If you're working with files, you can use schedule orchestration or file transfers. If you're working with pub-sub kind of integration styles, right? So you can use these two patterns here. So I'll select the app-driven integration here. And you can name the integration. So you can name the integration. Let me name this integration as ETR integration proxy. Okay, so let's keep it. And let's go and create this integration. And I will use a few connections here. Okay, so so when you create an integration, the way you connect to external systems is through the means of adapters. So adapters is the medium to go and create a connection. Okay, so I'll use one of the existing connections here. Okay, and so here we will call this as ETR proxy, travel proxy. Okay. And let's go ahead. So when we go, let's notice that. So our intention for creating this integration proxy is we wanted to go and update the integration, update the status of the travel request inside our Visual Builder business object. So we will use a patch operation. So a patch operation is basically to update any travel record with some status, with a given status as such when you provide an identifier. So we'll try to create a proxy for that. We will use a patch operation here. Okay, and update ETR proxy. And I will provide a runtime parameter here. I'll say travel request ID, and this is a dynamic parameter that you can provide here. And this is the wizard that you're going through. What you're seeing is a REST connection, REST adapter wizard, where you can say which operations you wanted to use invoke in REST and how your interface should look like and all that. Okay, so I'll use request and response configurations here, because every REST endpoint will have a request and response, and it will have a verb. So this is a patch verb which I'll go next, and I'll just keep this as an integer, and I'll go next. And in the request, right? So when my clients wanted to invoke this particular integration proxy, they need an interface, right? So I will use a sample interface. In integration, in the REST connection wizard, you can provide a sample interfaces in the form of a schema or a JSON or whatever. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use a sample JSON, which I have captured. So this sample JSON is basically, right, so whenever a client invokes with a travel request ID, right, and he needs to send the status, what status it needs to be updated into the Visual Builder DB, right? So I'm sending the format of this particular JSON in this particular structure. So we are defining a particular structure here. I'll go next. And I will also define a response structure, because whenever a client invokes this integration, they need a way back to get back a response from the integration, right? So I will use the sample structure once again, and I will finish this wizard. So we are able to create a proxy here, right? So proxy is basically an entry point, or a trigger is basically an entry point into your integration. So here, what I'll do is I'll go and invoke a Visual Builder business object operation. Okay. So before I invoke the Visual Builder business object operation, I wanted to establish a connection from integration to Visual Builder business object. So the way I can do is I can go to REST category. Okay. Or else I can go and create a connection straight away from here. Okay. So let me go and yeah, there are whole set of integrations here. So it's taking a while to render here. When I click on plus, right, so it shows up all the list of adapters which are supported in integration. Right, so for our demo, we will use a connection to Visual Builder. A connection to Visual Builder can be made using a REST adapter. So I'll first search for a REST adapter. So adapter is a way to connect your external applications, let it be a SaaS application or let it be an on-premise application. Okay, so I will select the REST adapter here. So to the REST adapter, I'll name this as ETR employee travel request VB connection probably. Okay, so that I can remember it easily. And since I will be invoking this connection, I'll use an invoke role and just create this connection. So when I create this connection, I can configure the connectivity to this connection. So I can say I want to invoke the REST API, and what connection URL I need to use. It's basically the business object endpoint. I'll copy this business object endpoint and use it over here. Okay, so I'll just remove this particular path and click on OK. So I've configured the endpoint to which this adapter should go and connect to, and I'll also configure the security, because this business object is protected with a basic auth. Okay, so let's use credentials here. Okay. Okay. So once you provide your credentials, click on test. So if this is able to, if the connection is able to, if the adapter is able to successfully ping this particular endpoint, it gives you it tested successfully. Okay, and it marks at 100% as well. So this is how you create a connection by using any of the adapters. Okay, so in this case, we have just used the REST adapter. So once I have this connection in place, right, so my idea is to, in this particular integration flow, we wanted to invoke a Visual Builder connection and try and use the patch operation in Visual Builder. Okay. So let me just stop sharing 1 second. And I noticed that when I keep sharing, right, so when I do a sharing, the browser behaves a little bit tricky, actually. So let me go and invoke Visual Builder connection here. So the connection which I created earlier. So what we'll do is we'll call this an endpoint as update travel request, or we can call it as update TA request. And we can say that as update travel approval request and provide a travel request ID here and select a batch operation. Okay, so let's go next. Let's mark this as an integer. And so we'll supply the same JSON sample, right, so as earlier, because the earlier what we did is we just created a proxy. Okay, so we will supply the same JSON sample because this is how the travel request is getting interfaced, and a sample JSON response also. We'll use a similar thing. Okay, so let's go and create this and click on done. So this integration is basically having a trigger point with the proxy interface, and that by client, when the client invokes, he gets into the proxy interface, and that interface details needs to be mapped to actual invocation which you are making into Visual Builder. Yes, so this is the actual invocation you're making into Visual Builder. Let's go into the mapper. So this mapping is a component where you can do the source and the target attributes or transformations or mapping or whatsoever. So this mapping, this is a mapper, and this is a canvas where you can put in all your transformations. Okay. So if you have a recommendations available, right? So recommendations is one of the features. If the feature is, if there is a recommended mapping which is available already, right? It shows up as available recommendations, then you can go and approve these recommendations, right? So that you don't need to do the mapping yourself. So here, let's map the template parameters. Template parameters are basically the travel request ID that you wanted to save your status of your travel request. And this is the status of the travel request which I wanted to map. So validate this. You can validate your mappings to make sure that your mappings are valid. And I can save this. And also, when my travel request is created, right, so I want to give some response back to the customer or the client which is invoking this particular integration. So I can use a map activity to reply back to the client here. So this map activity, right, so I'll try to do few mappings here. So the response I get from my travel request, right, so I wanted to go and map few elements here. So let's say, just pass this. I'll just use a few of them. First name and last name of the person who is traveling, and what is his cost of travel, and what is his country of travel, and start date of travel, and probably end date of travel. And I'll map to justification information which is coming back. And however, this is an information that is coming back to the client. So it really doesn't bother how many fields you really map here. Right? So I'm just mapping whatever is required. So to give client enough information, and I'll go and validate this mapping once again and close this integration. Okay. So this is a proxy integration that we have built to update a travel request status in the Visual Builder DB. Okay. So once you finish this integration, you can save your integration, and so the integration is not complete unless you define a tracking identifier. So tracking identifier is a means to identify. So whatever is unique across your integration, unique attribute across your integration request, the request which is coming in, right? So you can provide that as a tracking identifier. Okay, so I'll provide travel request ID as tracking identifier and the status as another tracking identifier. So using these tracking identifiers, you can go and search in the monitoring what request, well, what is the request ID and all that. Okay. So save this integration. I'll close this. So we have this integration, and how you deploy this integration is there's a power button, right? So this is basically you click on this, it goes and deploys into the runtime of OIC. Okay, so you can track your payload, also include your payload for monitoring reasons, and activate it. When you click on activate, activate is actually going and deploying these artifacts into the runtime of OIC server, okay, behind the scenes. So this particular hosted application, what you're seeing, it includes both the design time and runtime, and everything is a browser-based experience. You don't need to install any thick clients to go and talk to go and design this integration flows. So all the components which are within OIC, they're pretty much browser-based that you design your components or design your project whatsoever. So you have an integration which is created, and you can quickly test this also, right? So like doing a unit test, right? So for our integration, for example, let's say let's see what data is there in our business object that we imported here, and yeah, I see that there are few data which is there in this particular business object. Let's take an ID called 9 here, and let's see if we can update the status using this integration test here. Okay. So let's go and use a parameter called travel request ID as 9, and in the body, let's simply send the body. Let's say we send as approved, for example. Okay. So here we're trying to test whether our integration works or not. So an inline test is available, and I'm clicking on this test, and let's see what we get a response. Okay. So this is because the integration is not found. Probably this is because of the endpoint. Let me check once again. So let's go back to the connections. Okay, so let's check our connection once again. Okay, so this looks fine actually. And let me check the let's test this connection and save this connection. So this is the data. Let's go back to our integration. Let's do a quick check once again. Okay, so here, let me use some okay, let's see what's the problem here. So it says update here request not found. Okay, so what we can do is we can quickly go into the monitoring. So monitoring is a way you can check your integrations. So whenever we trigger this particular integration, it actually raises an instance, and using based on the tracking identifier, right? So it raises an instance here, and this is a travel request that we triggered, and you can see that this has failed. That failed, and you can see that this right symbol, which basically indicates that it's a 404, and okay. So what we can do is we can go and check back our integration. So if we have to edit the integration, we'll have to deactivate. You can click on that particular button, which deactivates your integration or undeploys, if you will. And we can go and check our integration. Let's try to see if we can fix that. So this is our Visual Builder connection that we are using. And let's check our part 1 TA, and let's see what the path we have given. Okay, so this is because our Visual Builder object endpoint is marked as this, and we gave a wrong context path here, so that is the reason it's saying it's not able to find it. Okay, so let's go next here, and let's finish it. Okay, so let's save this integration once again, and I'll close this integration. And also you can go and deploy new versions of the integration, if you will. Right, so for now I'll not create a new version, but I'll just go and activate this once again. Okay, so we have this integration proxy deployed. I can go and refresh this to see the status of my integration. Once it shows active, you can do a quick test here once again. Okay, so let's go and put in, oh sorry. Okay, so let's put the status, and let's do a quick check there. And we'll put a URL parameter and test this. So here we are trying to check our integration whether it can approve the, whether it can push the status approved or not. Okay, so let's go and refresh the data here into the Visual Builder. Right, so I see that Matt Hooper, it's an approved status. So which means that my integration really works, and I have my integration ready, right? So which can update a status into my Visual Builder data object, right? It's a business object. So the next step, what I wanted to do is from the Visual Builder, right? So for example, this is my web application, right? So if, so from the web application, in the web application, so let me show you what is the look and feel of this web application. I've not done anything really, right? So just to show you how the SaaS look and feel looks like. So this is a SaaS look and feel, and I can add my functionality of travel request in this particular page here. So I'll close this, or I'll go to. So this is a SaaS theme which is created. So what I can do is I can go to a page here in Visual Builder, and in the Visual Builder page, so I wanted to create a travel request page quickly and invoke a process from, trigger a process from here. So what I'll do is I'll just remove this junk content which is in there, and I'll simply place a table here to see the list of travel requests, to show someone a list of travel requests. And in Visual Builder, you can drag and drop any collection component and add data to that collection component. So here you can say what is the source of data for my collection component, right? So I can select the business object, a travel request is a business object, because that's where all my travel records are there in. And I can select which are the columns which I need to show in my tabular format. So what I'll do is in the tabular format, I'll select only a few of them. Let's say I'll say ID, first name, cost of travel, country of travel, and what is the status of this particular travel. Okay, approved or not. So I'll just go next. And this is very intuitive wizard in Visual Builder, where it can associate data objects to a page or a web application that you're trying to build. Right. So here we see a list of travel requests here. Right. So and also we wanted to create a travel request page for employee to go and create a new travel request. Right, so we can add a create page here in Visual Builder and select the travel request business object, and you can place all the fields that you wish to see on the new travel request which the employee would be using here. So generally the employee enters a few things actually, right? So first name, last name, cost of travel, country of travel, and email, and justification, and status obviously will not enter, so we'll try to make the status field as read only. And the start date of travel and end date of travel. I think there's a whole bunch of fields there, and let's finish this wizard. So this creates a create request page for us. So once we go and go into this particular page, right? So I can go and select this particular page from the Visual Builder canvas here. So when I created a new page, it created a new page for me here in the Visual Builder project structure. So this is my new travel request interface. So also it has created a functionality. Let's see what functionality it has really created. Okay, so I go and run this application. So it's getting refreshed. So Visual Builder doesn't need to wait. You don't need to save anything. It gets saved automatically, and you don't need to deploy anything explicitly. Right? So as and when you save, it gets deployed. Right? So it's like a hot deploy if you call it in the legacy days. Right? So this is a list of travel requests, and I can go and create a travel request. Let's say James. I enter some name here, some cost of travel, country of travel. So James at abc.com, some justification, Opti, and obviously status. So he will not be, he should not be entering. So we can make the status field as read only. For example, you can go to a particular field and say it as read only, so that it doesn't allow. And so I can enter start date of travel and an end date of travel. Okay, so I'll just save this record. So when I save this record, right? So this record actually, this record what we saved here, right? So it shows up here, but this is not what you really want, right? So we want when a travel request is created, right? So when you click on travel request, when someone saves a travel request, we need to kick off a process automation workflow so that it goes for a manager's approval. So this is where we wanted to go and leverage process automation component. So we have seen Visual Builder component, we have seen integration component. Let's now step into a process automation component. So in the process automation component, you can go to the process automation component like from the home page of OI processes here, right? So when you go and click on these processes, you land up into a page something like this. So this is a process composer canvas, we call it as, where you can build your workflows. And here I'll try to build a very simple workflow. I call this as employee travel request approval app. Okay, and I'll create a new space. I wanted to logically put all my artifacts into a workspace as such. So I'll call this as a travel demo space. Okay, and create this process application. So this process application is a component which allows you to go and create structured workflows, unstructured workflows. You can create decision models, and you have a web form component here, right? So to build, go and associate your forms to human intervention activities that you will be leveraging in your structured process and all that. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go and create a structured process here. So structured process, I can start with any number of triggers, any kind of triggers or any number of triggers I wanted. Right, so for at least for this sake of the demo, right, so we will try to invoke this particular process with a message or with a simple message. So I'll call this as ETR approval process. Okay, so employee travel request approval process, and I click a template called simple message approval pattern. So these templates are really helpful. It's like a quick start for you, so that you don't need to, once someone is a novice in process automation, building process workflows, you can start templates separately, which is a complete functionality, like something like a starters actually, where you don't need to worry the various how to go and orchestrate these various components here. So here, this process starts with a message. So we will try to. So every process application has few artifacts that process application uses. So for example, if you have data objects in process automation, you need to create a business types here. This case, business type. We can create a business type from the sample JSON here. Let's use a sample JSON. Okay, so we'll try to use a JSON, this sample JSON to create a data object. Let's try to save this as ETR travel request type. Okay, so and I go next, and you can say input. So what happens is the structure what you're given here, a data type of this particular structure is created, and now you can create data objects on this particular type. It's basically you're trying to create like an interface. and try to create as many data objects as you want based on the requirement based on this particular type. Okay, and also, right, so let's come back to our process here. So this is our process which we have there, and we wanted to associate. So this particular process starts with a message. So we can go to the properties of each of these, and we can define an interface. The interface is basically what message the process will receive. So what is the message that process? Basically the request which employee has sent, correct? So we will use a particular data type that we used here, right? So we will call this as ETR. Okay, so we call it as travel request arg, and we will mark this type. What kind of request it will receive is we will select a business type, a type which we created earlier. So this is a travel request business type that we created earlier, and I'll just click on OK. So which means that we are saying that this particular process receives a particular interface, which is that interface is of type travel request that we have created from a JSON structure. Okay, so this is a type that we're using, and also you notice that there are a lot of human intervention components there. Wherever you see a human symbol, so process is all about human approvals, okay? Because an intervention is needed by a human to go and say manually review the request and approve or reject or escalate or whatsoever. So these are human intervention components, and it pretty much follows the BPMN 2.0 models here, right? So I can go and associate. So for example, whenever an employee raises a travel request, the manager needs to see a form of the request, right? So what the actual request is about, right? So which means that he needs to see a page to see who has raised this request and for what he's raised this request. So for that, you need to associate a form. So if a form can be created out of from the process automation component itself, so I can click on this plus icon here, and I can create a new web form, or I can connect to an excellent user interface. So in this particular case, I will create a new web form here. I'll call it as create web form, and I'll say open immediately, click create. Okay. So what will this do is it shows up a canvas for us to quickly create a web form. So again, web form is a component pretty much available built-in part of process automation. So here you can basically build a form using a type which we have created. I could simply just go and drag and drop my type over here. So this is the kind of mechanism which we call it as an interface first mechanism rather than building a form first mechanism. Okay, so data first mechanism. So here we have a bunch of fields here, right? So for our manager to see this, and we can ignore the fields which we really don't want it to, because status is something which we really don't want it to. And we can also change certain things, like for example, you can change this to a text area or whatsoever. But for now, let's leave it like this. And this is our web form in process automation, which a manager typically would wanted to see this particular information. Okay. So what we did is we associated this particular form to human intervention activity. So when a process is kicked off, a message is gotten, and it throws this information to a human intervention. Right? So human, basically a manager who reviews this particular request. So what we have to do is we need to do a bit of data association, because we need to pass in the information which is coming from the message to the manager's form as such. So what we will do is we'll try to modify this a little bit. So let's say we delete this fulfillment, and so once a message is received by the process automation component, a manager approves this particular travel request. What needs to be done, right? So obviously, the first thing that needs to be done is the travel request needs to be updated with the status as approved into the Visual Builder. That is our architecture that we have defined, correct? So what we can simply do is we can drag and drop an integration component here, right? So this is one of the nice parts what you see in OIC. OIC is a cohesive platform which allows all of your components to interact one another, right? It's like a first class component, right? So for a process, you can call an integration. From an integration, you can call a kick off a process. Process from Visual Builder. So all these components track each other very easily, and since these are in calls which are co-located, right? So this doesn't go and pass through the internet as such. It treats as a local calls. local calls asset. So here what we can do is we can go and select our integration. So when I go and open the properties of this particular integration component, when I click on plus icon here, the plus icon basically shows up all the integrations which are available in my instance. So for example, here I can go and search my integration. So let's say I search for ETR. So ETR integration proxy, this is the integration which we created earlier, right? So we want to consume this integration from process. So you can simply search for that particular integration, and remember that whenever you come to this particular page, all your activated integrations only will be seen here. Obviously, because that's when you want to consume from a different component here, right? So here we are trying to create, consume an integration component from process. So what it does internally, it tries to generate request response interfaces within the process automation itself. Okay, so here you're able to call an integration, and also probably let's get rid of this notify component for a moment. And all we have to do is let's save this and try to do a bit of data association here. So what is the data association I really wanted to do? Because when I get a message from Visual Builder, I want this message to be the travel request message to be passed on to the form which the manager would be seeing, which means that the information needs to be persisted and passed on to the form. So what I'll do is I'll simply create a data object to persist my data from Visual Builder. Right? So what I'll do is I'll create so request, I'll call it as data object, and I will select business, and I'll select the type which I created earlier and simply add this data object. Okay. So this data object is nothing but an interface or a variable to store your travel request, so that you can use the data which is stored in this particular variable across your process. So what I can simply do is I can just do a so simply say select this source and target and see automap. Okay, so this is an automap feature in Visual Builder, and you can apply this so it maps all the data from source to target. And so this data object information which I have, right, so I need to project that onto a form for the manager. So I can go to the data association in that particular so here I have my data object information stored in the data object. Instead of this, probably what I'll do is I'll just put in this here, and okay, so what I'll do is I'll just put this guy here. Let's see if this is valid. Okay. Yeah, so I'll apply this. So from the data object, I'm passing the information to the form which the manager has to see that information. And also there is a conditional branches here. So we'll try to go and modify this condition here. So we can go and say that if the manager rejects this particular travel request, go and go to the resubmit branch as such. So every approval action that is being taken by the human intervention, right? So an outcome of that particular action is captured in the form of a task outcome data object, right? So I can say that if the manager rejects this, right? So go to resubmit. Okay, so it takes this particular path. But if the manager takes an approval action, right? So it goes to the default path. So which will then go and call the integration basically. So this is our process. So you can go and test this process actually, right? So in process automation, you have several partitions, like test partition, prediction partition, etc., simulator partition, and all that. So let's save this guy here, and let's go to test here. So test, and what I want to do is I wanted to activate this particular process automation, process application which I built. And here I'm adding myself to all the roles, which means that I'll be an employer, and I'll be the same person who will be approving them from the manager side also. So it's for the ease of the demo, right? So I selected myself as multiple roles which I'll be performing in the process automation. So I've deployed this, right? So I activated this process automation. So my whole idea is I wanted to consume this process automation component from this particular interface of Visual Builder, right? So that's the whole architecture we wanted to implement here. So what we can do is, So Visual Builder, when it created this particular request, right? So it goes and creates some action chains actually. So let's go and go into this action chain. So action chain is a mechanism where a business logic is constructed behind the scenes, like what needs to be done when someone clicks a save or a cancel or whatever. Right, so we'll try to make slight adjustments in this particular action chain. So what we will do is in the existing action chain, which has been formulated by Visual Builder, right? So we'll try to add a small thing like to start a process here. Okay, because whenever a record is created in Visual Builder, after a record is created, we wanted to kick off a travel request approval process. Correct. So whenever someone clicks on save, we wanted to go and kick off an approval process, because currently when we raise a travel request, it's not throwing an approval, correct? So we want to kick off a travel request process that we created. So here, when we start, so I used a component. So there are some native components related to process here, where straight will leverage this within the Visual Builder action chains. So this is what, again, I wanted to stress upon once again. Since the platform is cohesive in nature, right? So again, you're seeing Visual Builder ability to go and call process, consume process component automatically, right? So so here, since I deployed this process in test partition, right? So I'll go and register this deployed process. So what is the name of the process which I created is ETR approval app, correct? So let me go and search for this here and discover this process and add this process here. Okay, so when I add this process, it creates me a reference of this particular process here, and I can now go and select the process and use that particular reference here. Okay, so select this. And so what Visual Builder is, Visual Builder obviously sends some data, correct? So when someone clicks on this particular create request, all we have to do is we wanted to kick off a process with all this information and along with the identifier. So that the identifier is the key for us to go and update that information back into the Visual Builder database as approved, actually. So we need to pass on that identifier, required data set to our process. So let's go and assign this. So here, this is all the, so here what you're seeing is, so our process is starting with an interface, correct? So when we created a process, here, so in the receive message, we try to configure with a particular interface asset. So that interface is being shown over here because we are trying to consume this, consume a process from this web page. So this is our process related information that we wanted to pass, and this is our travel request information that we have in our Visual Builder page. So let's try to do a mapping between the fields between Visual Builder and process so that we can pass on this information successfully. I'll pass on all the relevant information, not all of them. Okay, so end date of travel, first name, and the identifier is key thing for us because that's where that's how we wanted to go and update our record using our integration that we have built. And last name, and probably start of date of travel. And status, obviously, you don't need to pass because that needs to be updated dynamically. So I'll just not pass anything here. And I think we have all the enough things. And ID is key. And let's save this. So we have mapped the information from web page to the process. Okay. And also we wanted to file it's just a notification here. So whenever someone creates, right? So we wanted to just tell them that a travel request record has been created. So we'll just leave the fire notification information as is right now for now, or else let's say I'll just use process related identifier here so that we can show something there. Okay, so this is we made little adjustments to the action chain of our Visual Builder so that it can kick off a process, and so I think we are pretty much done. So what we try to achieve in this whole demo is what we try to achieve. So we created a web page which is Visual Builder, and we created a process approval process using process automation, and we created an integration to go and persist or change the status of the travel request record asset. Okay. Let's go back to the integration. Okay. So we should be able to run this integration successfully. So let's just run this application successfully. Let's go and refresh this guy here. I'll go and click on travel request. So fingers crossed. I'll name this as, okay, so she's one of my favorite boxer. So cost to travel, it's India, and add some junk email address and some justification for boxing probably, and started a travel, very unlikely, but still putting something here, and I'll click on save. So when I click on save, ideally, it gives me a confirmation saying that this is a process ID which got triggered. Okay, so what we'll do is so we'll go to the test application here, and let's see if this travel request has really got kicked off. Okay, so let's go and see on this. And so since I'm the same person who's trying to raise a request as well as approve it, because I'm trying to play multiple roles here, so this is the approval. So this from the task list, right? So this is typically a manager's view where he goes into the task list and goes and steps into the task list and sees all the information here. And we see that the task list shows that for the manager, Mary Com is traveling to India. So and probably looking at all this, looks everything fine. Probably the manager says that, okay, approve the travel request. Okay, so the approve the travel request. So in process, you can always go and see the track of your process basically. So the track of the process is, okay, failed at some particular place. Okay, so this is expected to fail, I guess, because we didn't do a data association to our integration, looks like. So let's see if that is the reason. So you have a monitoring capability in every component, right? So you have an integration, you have in process, you can see where things have failed, things are stuck or whatsoever, right? So you can see that pretty much at the integration part when it's trying to consume, it failed at this particular place. It's indicating that a red symbol, which means that it failed to execute an integration, right? So it failed to execute an integration. It is probably because my travel process, what I did is I didn't pass any information in where I associated my integration, but I didn't pass all the relevant information that needs to go to the integration that I'm consuming. So which I'll quickly do now. From the data request, what I'll do is I'll send the, so I will go and pass on this ID. Okay, so it says as typecast information. So I'll say as string typecast. And, okay, so that and typecast this to a string. And so the status, so also status, we just wanted to send it as approved, correct? So what I'll do is I'll just use say it as, okay, so then it is approved, okay. So however, yeah, so this is what we wanted to do. This integration failed because nothing has gone, we didn't pass any identifier, to be frank. So that's expected to be failed. And so you can always go and test this application once again, right? So all you have to do is go and activate this once again so that it goes and picks up the latest changes. So this goes and activates, okay, and so let's give a second here, and this process is deployed, and now all I have to do is go and create a new travel request to verify. Okay, so I'll say this time as Mary Com still, and I'll say as Mary Com 1 cost of travel, and something at davis.com justification saying some start date of travel and date of travel, and save this record. Okay, so let's see how it works here, right? So a confirmation, we got a and let's go and see this guy here, my task. So manager goes to the task list and he sees a new task, which is 11 seconds ago, and so this is Mary Com 1 and approve it. So approves. And so if things goes fine, let's go to processes once again and let's monitor this process, what has happened really. Okay. So this time it looks fine, looks like, because so it goes well. This is different actually. No, this is, I have not seen the fulfilled one actually. Okay. Older actually. Yeah, I'm mistaken. So I should have filtered with the completed ones actually. Yeah, run. So it could hit this. Okay, so this is what it is, and I see that this time we are able to successfully call this integration. And since process is calling an integration, I can simply step into the integration window here and go to the monitoring tab and figure out that if so the integration has been called successfully, I can see a green symbol saying completed here. Okay. So this is completed here. Okay. So let's go back to Visual Builder and let's go to Visual Builder data object, travel request data object. And we should see has Maricom 1 and it's her travel request is approved. Okay. So what we have noticed here is so this travel request, this application, what you've seen, right? So this is not just Visual Builder, just trying to build an application yet, right? So what is the next steps for a typical integration architect is they would bring this application and try to connect this into their Fusion application. Let's say customer has an HCM application. This application can be connected from the page integration wizard in the HCM cloud so that this particular application can be launched straight away from the HCM cloud itself, so that the end user, who's actually the employee, who's actually raising this request, feels that as if this application is natively originating from HCM application, and rather than it's not a separate application, correct? So that's the whole idea. So this typically is an example for a SaaS extension. Okay, so Visual Builder, if you notice that, right? So the requirement pretty much demands us to have an integration, have a workflow to be created, and have a web interface. And the idea of OIC is for us to go and facilitate all these features and try to build a solution out of it. Okay, so it's not just for integration, and many times OIC is misinterpreted as just used only for integration. It's really not. It's whenever you use the actual set of capabilities OIC has, right? So that's the real power you see in OIC. Okay, with insight being added, and the platform has become really powerful. Okay, so that's a quick demo of the whole entire 3 set of components in OIC.